Hello there everyone, I am the Common Sense Guy and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to have to be a little bit serious for a change, and the story that we're doing today, as far as I'm aware, actually happened. And this is the state of what we're actually in at this moment in time. Where a police officer phoned up a charity to ask if it was okay for a particular man, an Iraqi man, to have relations with a 12-year-old. Hey, don't take my word for it. We'll go to the story very, very soon. But that's what we're doing. That's the story today. That's a police officer that's supposed to be dealing and looking after and dealing out justice and everything to the eyes of the law, phoning up a charity to get clarification that if an Iraqi man, can have sex with a 12-year-old. I don't want to use my name as a pun, so to speak, but common sense would dictate that you can't have sex with a fucking 12-year-old. One would think, yeah? So, let's actually get into the story and actually see what's going on. So as you can see there, this is from the Times, and it's forced marriage officer asks if Iraqi man could date 12-year-old. And obviously you have a picture there. So, as you can see, it's want to read more because I need to register it. I'm not registering it, but you can get the gist of what's going on. So, a police officer phoned a charity to ask whether it was culturally acceptable for an Iraqi pedophile to have a 12-year-old girlfriend. Yes. This bodes completely and utterly into everything that people that were talking about Rotherham and Telford and all the others were talking about. The fact that the state is complicit in what's going on. The fact that the state is too scared to react, to actually deal out the truth and actual justice to these people. This is an actual abomination to our culture, to our children. The detective had arrested... See, it's not even a police officer. It was a fucking detective. He should know what the actual cultural points are. You're in this country. You deal with the cultural, sociological norms of what we have. Sorry, societal norms of what we deal with. So the detective had arrested the 26-year-old man, but wanted to be culturally fucking sensitive after the suspect said the relationship was acceptable in his community. Well, that either says and suggests that he's a fucking liar, or is it acceptable in his culture? Is it acceptable in his community? And again, as I said, just because that it's not acceptable in ours and we actually want to look after the safety of our children and make sure that they are fully safe, it's amazing that a detective would even suggest and even phone up a charity to ask if it was okay. It's fucking amazing. So Karma Nirvana, yeah, the charity that took the call, told the officer to deal with the man as he would any other suspected child abuser. Thank fuck for that charity then. It comes to a point when it's amazing that our law enforcement and our law officers don't even deal or do what they're supposed to do because of racism. It's absolutely abhorrent to me and absolutely piss-taking to me that people would actually even phone up a charity to ask if it's okay for a 26-year-old man to bang a 12-year-old. Because let's be honest, that's what he's going to do it for. Don't think that he's holding her hand and walking around the mall with her and taking her out for pizza. He's doing it for a particular reason. For his sexual gratification. And yes, sexual gratification. And yet the police officer, the detective that was on duty and wanted to do this and was doing it, yeah, had to phone up because he didn't want to seem culturally insensitive. Where are we going? Where is this country going to? Where is the world going to now? When the people that are supposed to protect us are more worried about being called racist than protecting our children from pedophiles. Let that sink in. They are more scared of being called racist than protecting our children from pedophiles. This is where your outrage culture gets you. Where the police are afraid to do their jobs. It's absolutely amazing to me that people even look at this and even would take the time to read it and go, yeah, I can understand why he done that. If you could read this page and you go, I can understand why he's done that, you are the problem. You are the problem. That you think that people have to be that culturally sensitive where it actually affects children of 12 and younger, or even older, or anybody that's physically at harm from these incidents. And yet, people like yourself that would agree with what he's just done, yeah, you're the problem. You're the reasons why people are like the way they are. The reasons why Islamophobia is on the rise, if you want to put it that fucking way. You're the reason why this happens. Because you're not fighting for the children anymore. You're fighting for a cultural identity that takes children, that takes them as child brides, that wants them as child brides. I don't understand why that would even be worth a phone call from a English detective to a charity to ask if it's something to do with their culture. Even if it is something to do with their culture, stop treating them differently. They are the same when they're in this country. The laws abide to everyone. There is not one law for one and not one law for another. Otherwise, you are either victimizing them or you are discriminating against them. The same thing is what you're doing for us, because if you are putting the laws differently for different people, that means that you're discriminating what laws and what practices you put in place to different people. That in itself is being racist. That in itself is being bigoted. I don't understand why these things are going on the way that they are. Well, I suppose I kind of have an inkling, innit? As I said before, if it's a case of these things are going on and this is just one instance of when a charity was actually able to get the story out, because I don't imagine the police officer went off and told the Times. I can imagine that it was the other way around. So when it comes to a case of something like that, what's actually happening here? I think it's the police that are falling into the trap of multiculturalism. The idea that all cultures are beautiful, all cultures are not beautiful. That's the reasons why there are differences in the cultures, because people choose to live their lives differently and have different sets of standards. And it's those different sets of standards now that actually separate us. It's not necessarily a cultural divide. A cultural divide in itself can be accepted. It's a set of principles and it's the set of ideas that separate us. The ideas of what we can and what we cannot do, who we can fight, who we can't fight, the aspirations of being able to accept the laws that are passed in our own countries. These laws that are there to determine the safety generally of most people, if not all people, are there for a reason. But when you separate the laws and you distribute the laws separately and you operate on a separate basis, on a different person by different person basis, as in if you have a white person then you have the full extent of the law coming after you. But if you are of a particular descent, or if you are of a particular orientation, or if you are a particular different form of multiculturalism, then it's a case that they do not come after you. It is a case of they phone up charities to ask if it was culturally acceptable for 12-year-olds to be with a 26-year-old. Is it okay for that man to be in a sexual relation with that little girl? And it's a case of, if the police are separating it as this, as in that's culturally acceptable and they're going to leave it for them, then it's a case of they need to look at themselves hard in the mirror. The laws are in this country to protect the people of this country, not to protect a minority, not protect a certain ideology or sect of people. It is there to protect everyone. The eyes of the law are supposed to be blind. As the saying is, justice is blind. But if we're not being blind and we're being partial, because we are deciding what we can and what we cannot do and how things are going on, then it's a case of we're not actually being a tolerant country anymore. We're actually separating people, and we're actually enforcing a unofficial apartheid, where one sect of people have to follow one sect of rules and another sect of people have to follow another sect of rules. Now, when these people inevitably clash, you cannot try them on the same basis. So if you have the laws that protect the children in our country, but then it comes to a point of somebody's culture that apparently allows to have child marriage and child relationships comes and has child relationships, what one wins? The protection of the child in our own country, or the culture that apparently suggests and says that it is their culture to have child relations? I would like to think that the country that they're in is the point. The laws of the country are the laws of the country regardless of what cultures come into the country, and to suggest that those laws should change to fit a small minority of a culture that comes in is absolutely ridiculous. But then again, we can understand why these people push these narratives, and to a point why the police can actually be scared of necessarily breaking that cultural divide. Because if you break the cultural divide, two things happen. You have the outrage community that will be outraged by the fact that you've actually done your job to the letter and actually are producing what you said you're producing. But you also have the second side, which is the more dangerous. The realization that you can fight back, the realization that you can use your culture to be able to get to where you want, and to the fact that you'd be actually able to stop necessarily getting arrested or having things happen to you, because you have so many people that are going to defend you because of ideology. This is where identity politics comes into play in multiculturalism. It's not an us versus them. It's a Muslim versus a Christian. It's a Tory versus a Labour. It's an us versus them mentality. The more that we push this mentality, the more it's a case of we will separate ourselves. Now, I'm not trying to say that we all need to sit down and sing Kumbaya, but also at the same time, we cannot fight ideology by quelling the people that preach it. We have to destroy the ideology by proving the fact of what they're saying is wrong, and by actually putting the law correctly to all individuals that are in our realm. Because if you do not, then you have separation. Separation causes discrimination. Discrimination causes hate. And a vicious cycle continues onward and onward. And yet, we still produce that cycle. And we cannot do anything to change that. Because ideologically and identity plays their part of what we are supposed to do and what we think we need to do. I will protect you because you look like me. I will do this because I feel that you need to do this. Now, as you can see at this moment in time on the video, you have a person that has been pulled over for a particular reason. I will link the video in the description box below, so please have a look and have a read of it properly. But they are now pulling the person out because he has broken the law by some level of description. Okay? You have lots of people that are around at this point in time that are saying that this is the wrong thing to do and it shouldn't be happening and everything like that. He's now protesting his innocence, and it's now to do with a culture that is now coming around where he looks like us, we need to protect him. and just have a look and see what actually happens. I'm going to actually play the video for everybody so they can hear it and see what's going on. You can see how everybody is now starting to crowd the police.
For your own safety, please. Thank you. He's got cuts on his ears. Yeah, bring your face forward. I refuse to be arrested. Bring your face forward. Show your ear. Show your ear.
If you've been a prick, then nobody's going to move, is it?
Well, you're not listening. Hey, record it. We're recording. Don't worry, it's all being recorded. Watch out.
He's spraying me! He's spraying me for no reason!
You just sprayed him! You just sprayed him, you fucking prick! He just got sprayed for no reason at all!
He's spraying me for no reason!
This officer has just sprayed him! Go on, what are you gonna do? We're on the pavement! You've just sprayed him for no fucking reason! Cousin! They just sprayed him and now they're starting on. You all famous? You all getting famous? You all getting famous?
You just needed to ask him for ID. You just needed to ask him what his name was. He would have told you. You wanted to smash his fucking window.
What is you fuckers? I've got bad attitudes. You know why? I'm not an educated anybody. No one do nothing yet. No one touch him with the ball. All the complaints are going. I've got the full thing. This officer just sprayed him for no reason. This motherfucker.
So you don't know your rules. You don't have to know. What's he been arrested for?
I'm not going to discuss it with you because I don't you might not want to. Just let him on.
He's our uncle, you know who he is.
That's fine. I didn't have a video anyway.
CCTV. But you need to what's CCTV there? What's CCTV where? Where's the CCTV?
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Where's the CCTV?
Why don't you call that down there?
No, technically, we can put him on the back of the arrest.
Yeah, come on. That's arrest. Allah these guys.
See, this is the difference in culture. The difference in culture and the idea of fitting in is the fact that the gentleman probably actually broke the law. Now, I did not actually see him get sprayed or anything else like that at the back of the van, but at the same time as he was resisting arrest, I don't see why they had the problem of actually doing that. I don't see what the bad thing was. The point is that because he is of a particular orientation, because he is of a particular descent and of a different faith, and people are now coming to his defense and absolutely trying to quell the police from actually doing their jobs. Now remember, the reason why I'm showing you this is not because I think that the police do an amazing job all the time. Unfortunately, sometimes they get things wrong. But if they are treated like this on a routine traffic stop, or on something as simple as a traffic stop compared to grooming gangs, or to the idea of actual violence going on, then how do you think that the police are actually treated between that point? How do you think that this escalates? How do you think that the police are now scared of these people? Now, that does not give them the right to separate laws from person to person, from race to race, from religion to religion. But at the same time, this is the reality of the UK. This is the reality, unfortunately, for the police officers that have to deal with this. They have to deal with this on a daily basis for almost any crime that comes and has been committed by a particular set of peoples. And yet, when this happens, people still go after the police for doing their jobs because of identity politics. Because you are my brother, I will defend you, even though you have done something wrong criminally. That's where we are at this moment in time. That's where we are. And this is to point out the simple and easy truth that this was all done for a traffic stop, and you had almost civil unrest and possible fighting occurring due to the fact of a traffic stop. So imagine what it would be if it was something that was more major and with more people involved. I do not see how this is anything that needs to be protected. This needs to be squashed so the police can do their jobs properly when they do it properly. And we need to stop calling the police racist if they're not being racist and carrying out the laws justly. I am the Common Sense Guy. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. Thank you very much. Bye bye for now.